I'm just going to share now a kind of a bit of my personal story. So you can learn more about me as an individual, but you can also take lessons away from some of the life experiences that I've had, and also just kind of get perspective, because I think there's lots. I have a fairly influential voice on LinkedIn as kind of like a core platform. I've got over 35,000 followers, and there's a lot of kind of misconceptions. Actually, I hear back channel chat about me all the time. It's very wrong. Sometimes it's very right. But I want to just let you understand who I am and kind of my story, and then also kind of you can take some lessons from that are going to be valuable to you. So the first thing is I'm actually half Polish. So my surname is Skowronski. So I'm actually James Alexander Skowronski. The reason why I decided to short it to Ski is when I was at university, I used to throw parties. That was one of my first business that I got into. And one night, I remember the moment like it was yesterday, I was running around trying to get students, interested in the party that I was organising. And so I used to give out my phone number. And this girl came up to me, she goes, look, I want to come to your night on Wednesday. I was like, great, how many of you? She's like, 10. I was like, perfect. And she's like, cool, what's your number? Gave her the number, and then she's like, what's your name? I'm like, oh, it's James Skowronski. And she was just like, no, I'm just going to call you Ski. And weirdly enough, I was 19, no one had ever called me Ski before. I'd had other nicknames. And I was like, that's cool. She's like, well, there you go. I never saw her again. But literally, so in that moment, I kind of adopted Ski. And also because I believe in the power, even then, of being memorable, James Ski just came something that's very memorable. And so that's kind of why I go by Ski, but I'm half Polish. My father's Polish, originally came to London in the 60s. And his goal was actually to end up in the US, but he met a woman in the UK, which was my mum. So he ended up kind of staying here. So my dad is an orthopedic surgeon. So he, actually saves lives. He's retired now, but I always found it inspiring, the kind of 7-day work ethic that he would have to have, because he was on call a lot of the time. And at the end of the day, if there was an accident, a major road accident, he was required to go into surgery and, fix someone and hopefully save their life. My mum is a nurse, and that's how they met, in a hospital, not unusual. And, she spent hours caring for people and helping people. So for me, I've kind of always had this caring and want to help people, but I can't stand hospitals. And I was put off very early on as a kid, being taken around hospitals, that this is not what I want to do, kind of when I was older. So early on, I grew up in a town called Windsor. Which is world renowned because it's got the Windsor Castle, or most people know Legoland, which is the other reason people go to Windsor. And if I'm honest, I had a very fortunate, kind of very privileged kind of background. I mean, I was pretty kind of standard middle class, but I went to great schools. I had a really good education. I was exposed to sport early on. Rugby was my main sport. I also played football, and I was also a high-performing rowing athlete. Rowing actually was what was my kind of chosen passion. And rowing in the UK has been a world-class sport for 20, 30 years, mainly because we had a very famous Olympian called Steve Redgrave. He basically won 5 gold medals at 5 consecutive Olympics, which is unheard of, over a kind of a 20-year period. And very early on, I was kind of inspired by the idea that somebody anywhere, at any starting point, can become world class at something. The idea for me that you can become world class is something that I believe is exciting. And very early on, it was instilled in me in my sport that you have the opportunity to be the best in the world if you follow certain high performing traits. And so I'm going to be going through what some of those high performing traits are after I've shared more about my story. Uh, the other thing is, like, it was very obvious to me quite early on that I wanted kind of a bit more than those that were around me. And I think maybe sometimes you can relate to this. Like, we all have great friends and family that, you know, will hang out with you and kind of, you know, go to the nice places that you want to go, maybe organise holiday. But I felt often quite lonely in the fact that I just wanted more. Like, I just had ambition that didn't seem to resonate with people around the table. And therefore, like you mentioned it, like you talk about an ambition. I remember very specifically, I was in a car journey once, I was 15. So one of the 18-year-olds was driving it, and we were talking about what we could earn like one day, and it was all like, you know, yeah, 30k, like when I can get to 30k, it's going to be really good. And like, I was like, oh, cool. And then one of the other guys, no, it's like, no, 50, like 50k, that's what my mum and dad earn, like 50k is a really good number. And I was like, no, 100k, that's my, and literally it was like the car just stopped, and everyone looked at me, it's like, that's impossible. £100,000, like, no. And in that moment, I was just like, well, that's an incentive in itself to kind of go and earn 100k one day. And so like, you know, there's these moments that kind of, I remember that are part of my story. And the point of this is you also have moments in your life that you might not remember, but I kind of implore you to think about, because it helps you define your why. And that's one of the other things that we're going to do today. If you really understand why you want to earn 200k or 100k, 250k, 500k, you want to have a multi-million pound business, like, to pursue that sustainably and put in the work that is required, because this all requires work, you really do have to understand your why. Like, why do you really want to do this? Like, why are you motivated to go the extra mile? Why are you motivated to show up on a Saturday? Like, the why is really, really important, because when you're in your depths of despair and life is really hard, it's the why that you can pull on. And my why will become clearer as I share my story. So like I said, if I'm honest, like, very good life. The school I went to, the Windsor Boys School, is well known for producing like world-class rowing athletes, great sports people, like strong academics, but it is a mixed school. So it wasn't a private school. We had kind of, you know, children from the forces, so, you know, parents that were in the forces. We had people that lived on council estates. We had people's parents that were on benefits, people that had food stamps. Like, it was a full range of kind of backgrounds, but that gave me a lot of exposure to like what society looks like, right? There's just all levels of people. But one of the other things that I think became very obvious early on is that you can really choose like your outcome. It's not just the card that you've been dealt. So a lot of people very early on will decide they're stupid. You know, like, I just had mates that were just like, I'm thick, I'm not going to try at all. And I was like, well, where's that come from? It's like, well, you know, I've struggled at this, I've struggled at that. And so they were just given up, right? Like, they literally therefore would not pursue anything academic because they'd given up. And that's self-talk, your inner voice. And the inner voice really is what we spend all day, every day with. It's not your friends, it's not your family, it's not your girlfriend, wife, husband, it's yourself. So like, how can you understand that voice that's in your mind so it works in your favor rather than holds you back or tells you you're not good enough? Because actually, a lot of the time, the voice that we've developed has come from our parents, it's come from the circles that we were surrounded by in early on, it's come from friends, you know, it's come from people that maybe, you know, commented on you, picked on you, media, and it's actually like this kind of amalgamation of just lots of stuff that you haven't really grasped and got control of. And when you start to really become self-aware about like what you're saying to yourself and listening to yourself, it becomes really powerful, because then you can start to challenge that voice. And also sometimes you need to befriend it. You know, you actually need to be friendly to the voice that's in your head, and you remind yourself that you're okay, you can do more, you can be more, you can have more. And that actually is a practice, like it's a muscle. You have to remind yourself that it's okay to want the things that you want. But I've had resistance. That's what it's called. Like lots of times when I've wanted to pursue something more, it's like, no, you're not good enough. Like, don't try that. Like, it's not. You don't deserve that. Why should you be that good? And it's like, where's this coming from? But like, you've got to understand that and start to extract it. And so another thing that we're going to be doing is like working on what our positive affirmations are, statements that we can define that are ours, that might be aspirational, but they stick with you. And that no matter how difficult or challenging the voices in your head, like you can hold those affirmations and remind yourself that you are great, you can achieve, and you can do what you like. So as I said, I kind of had this like good experience. I was pursuing sport. Now, if I'm honest, I had kind of traits probably early on that maybe were kind of obsessive. I became very obsessed about the pursuit of rowing for Great Britain. That was my kind of big goal. And also my introduction to business and why I knew I wanted to be in sales and business was quite funny. Basically, I was on holiday with like a lot of families. There's like 10, 20 families, like parents are taking their kids, and we'd taken over a couple of apartments in Cyprus. And so we went out there, and one of the girls that was in the group I really fancied, she was like my top pick. Never got anywhere with her, by the way, so that one didn't work out. But her dad was a very successful businessman in the town, and he had lots of books that he was reading while he was on the Sun Lounger. And the cool thing is he also highlighted the pages of the book. So if you picked up his book, you'd almost got like the better stuff, because when someone's highlighted it, you just flick through to the highlight pages. And like this particular book, some people may be aware of it. It was called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I read the book and I was like, hold on a minute. Like you can be wealthy, like you can have financial freedom, you can employ people, you can invest, you don't need to be employees, you don't need to work for anyone. No one ever had said to me that I shouldn't do anything other than go to uni and get a job and work for someone. Like that's what everybody at school was being taught, that is the pursuit of success. So when I read this book, and I was obviously admired him because I liked his daughter, I was like, wow, this is really cool. So it's like in that moment, that was another moment for me where I was like, this is it. This is my pathway to my future. And then all the recommended books in that book, I then went and bought when I got home, and I started to kind of read. And that's what kind of was a trigger to me that kind of anything is possible. But you know what the funny thing is? And it still grates me now, and it still winds me up, is that the idea of being rich or wealthy is looked down on in some ways. Like, there are so many people that when I started to say I want to have my own business, that they would turn their nose up and literally like look down on me. And I thought, oh, sorry, like if I was to say I want to be a doctor, it's like, yeah, good for you, you want to be a doctor. If I said I wanted to be a consultant, oh wow, you want to go into consultancy. If I said, even banking, like, oh wow, you're going to be a banker, that's really cool. But when I said like, no, I want to be a millionaire, no, like that's not happening, that's not a chance. So that was confusing as well, because like, I was reading all the books and like no one really kind of was aligned to those goals. I just couldn't find it. No one at my school. Like, there was a couple of mates that were like interested in business, but no one was pursuing it as hard as I was. No one was going like the extra mile, doing the extra study. So that was quite confusing early on. So that kind of probably alludes to a bit of the why. Like, why do I want to be standing up helping people? Because I'm just like, no one was really giving me a chance when I wanted help. Like, that's quite simply it. I couldn't find someone to help me, and so now I want to be able to help other people. So I completed school. School academically actually became very challenging. I was kind of prioritizing my rowing. I had this idea that I wanted to be in business. I remember another moment when my mum was dropping me to school one day, and she was like, look, you're doing everything you need to go to uni. And I was like, I'm not going to uni. And she literally stopped the car, pulled over, and she said, if your decision is not to go to uni, you can move out now. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you are 100% going to university, and if you're deciding that you're not going to pursue university, you can leave the home. So basically I was going to get made homeless, or I was going to uni. So it was quite an easy decision for me. I was going to uni, but that was kind of the point, right? I didn't have any alternative, like the encouragement. And of course, going to university is a privileged position to be in. So fair enough, I got back on quickly on that track, and I ended up going to deciding very easily on which uni I was going to go to based on where I could go and row, because rowing was what I was pursuing as a sport. So I ended up at Oxford Brookes University, which for those who don't know, it's not Oxford Uni, for the international folks in the room. It's a little college down the road, which is basically academically middle of the road. Generally, you get lots of private school kids that go to Oxford Brookes because all their mates are at Oxford Uni, so they want to be in Oxford so they can hang out with their friends from private school or boarding school. And then you just get a mixture of everyone. That may be unfair, like the uni is doing a lot better now, but it is a middle of the road uni, that's the bottom line. So when I got there, my first goal was not study, not rowing, not girls. It was, I'm going to set up my first business. Like, I'm free from my parents, I've got a loan, like, let's just go and start up a company. And so I arrived in the Freshers' Fair, and I was walking around the Freshers' Fair, and it was like, you know, this party, that party, or, you know, this is how you need to budget, this is how you need to save. And then I met this guy, and he was like, this is a business opportunity. I was like, oh, cool, tell me all about it. And essentially, it turned out to be a multi-level marketing business. Now, some of you that might not be aware of multi-level marketing, it is actually a very successful model. So, like, you may have heard of Tupperware, which is selling Tupperware, or Ann Summers, this is a similar model, or Herbalife. Any other names? Anybody know? Avon, yeah. Yes, Amway. So it was actually Amway that I joined. These are billion-dollar companies that basically work on the model that the first person that gets into the program has to recruit their friends to be sellers. But you don't get paid to do this. You make your margin on what's sold. And then, so it's multi-levels. Like, if you start at the top, you hire 10 people, they hire 10 people, you start making money out of everyone. Yeah, this is illegal in Germany. Okay, so it does have it's like network marketing. Yes. Yeah, it does have like very negative connotations, because basically people are selling you the dream, and the dream's not that easy in anything in life, right? But I was sold the dream straight away. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can make money while I'm at university. I was literally signed up straight away. I was not interested in Freshers Week. And I got invited to, I guess in some ways I'm doing it now, but it was like personal development conferences on a Saturday. But most of the people at these events, bless them, were like in their 50s and like a bit hopeless at this stage of their life. They were kind of desperate to figure stuff out. And then there was these kind of Americans that got on the stage and were like selling you the dream. Anyway, I got into it, and I made no money. I recruited 30 students; they made no money, and it was a bit of a disaster. But there is an important message actually I want to put out there, and even from what I'm saying today, this is important. Don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you see. Don't believe everything you hear. Be critical and take responsibility for what you take in. Even from what I'm going to tell you today, right? That's okay. Like, it's not gospel, right? I'm not the only person that can share some strategies, tips, and advice and frameworks, right? So just also be careful, because in life there are a lot of scoundrels out there, right? And I've been burnt a lot of times, and you may of yourself already, and you may again. So just be self-aware. Even with what I'm sharing today. So that was another lesson. So I kind of, like, my life at uni was very much rowing kind of 6-7 days a week. Yes, a little bit of going out, the odd lecture. I didn't go to many, and I was studying business. I didn't find it a contributor to actually running a business. Like, it was all kind of economics and strategy and was it Porter's 5 Forces? Anyone remember that? Like, there was all all these kind of like frameworks. The lecturers, bless them, they just didn't inspire me really. And I guess at uni, I started to find a bit more of a tribe. Like, there was definitely more people that are a bit more matured, people that had travelled, people that were like, okay, the reason I'm here is to set up a company. And I started to kind of feel like, okay, I'm kind of figuring stuff out, but there still wasn't like the practical application of why I was at uni and how it was going to help me financially with my career. It was like, there's the knowledge, but then you still got to go and figure it out when you leave here. And like that was the gap, actually. What you realise is you get the degree, you leave university, and then you're just starting over again. And it's kind of like, well, I've got to go and figure it out now, but I just spent 3, 4, 5 years thought I had figured it out, and you don't. So, I believe like even in these 8, 9 hours a day, there'd be stuff in this day that you just never would have talked about at university that would be more practical to your financial goals and pursuits. So I rode, did a bit of partying, had this multi-level marketing business, didn't turn out that well. So then a lot of people that were successful, or people that I was hanging around with, were the promoters throwing the parties. They're often like the top of the social ladder in a campus because they're the ones organising the parties. I wasn't going to be a drug dealer. That was profitable for people. That wasn't my route. But I was like, okay, so I'm going to throw some parties. So I got a group of people together, found a club. It was kind of like off the beaten track. It wasn't like the main kind of event. It was new. And I agreed with the club that I would run the night, promote the venue. I'd get all the money on the door. So if students were paying 5, 10, 15 pounds, I'd keep the cash and the club would make the bar. So very simple model. First night we did on a Sunday, and it was absolute sellout. It was phenomenal. But it was the Sunday before the Monday, the main night, which is, the Monday of Freshers Week in every town is a mega event. And every club was open on that Monday. And my little club, no one knew about, no one cared about. But on Facebook, I had over 1,000 people say they were coming. So I rocked up like, this is going to be an awesome night. Got 1,000 people on the guest list. I was telling my friends how cool it would be. Start opening the doors at 9 p.m. And I'm like, where is everyone? And I was like, okay. So I started texting a few mates, you come in. And then the messages started coming in. Like, no, I'm going somewhere else. No, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going somewhere else. I was like, okay, so there's literally like no one showing up. And the owner started coming outside. He's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. So I started getting really pressured. So I thought, all right, let's go and check out the main strip. So I walked, and this club was just off the road. So I walked kind of around the corner to the main strip. All my mates, everybody that said they were coming, were queuing up to all the other nightclubs on the strip. And in this moment of like madness, I was like, okay, I need to get their attention. So I ran to the car park, got my car, put the keys in the car. It was like a very small, crappy Vauxhall Corsa, tiny car. Wound down the windows, turned up my Mega Blaster, drove down the main strip where all the people were, thousands of students, did a 360-degree turn in my car, got out of my car, stood up in the car, and then stripped. So just like your reaction, that one, I'm on top of the car, and thousands of students now have got out their phones, they're filming it, they're screaming, they're laughing, they're in shock. Some bugger stole my keys. Some student literally ran and stole the keys out of my car. So I'm standing there, keys are gone, traffic's building up, buses there, cars stopped, and I'm like, what am I doing? So I'm like, look, come to the club, just go down the road and all this. Anyway, eventually my keys fly out and someone returns them. I get back in the car, drive around the corner, and I'm literally like, oh my God, what have I done? And then, woo, police turned up, 3 police cars, like, grab me out of the car, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just trying to get people to my nightclub. They're like, are you crazy? I was like, well, no, it's a situation. Like, you've just caused a major incident. Have you been drinking? Have you been taking drugs? And I was like, no, absolutely not, I haven't. Anyway.
Natural state.
Yeah, I was like, this is my natural heart. Well, this is it. So 2 days later, I ended up in a mental health hospital. So this is the challenging part. And by the way, any reaction's fine. Laugh, cry throughout today, it's all fine. So 2 days later, I was basically escorted to a mental health hospital in Ascot, which is down the road from Windsor, and I completely had lost the plot. I didn't really understand what was going on. My parents were away at the time. In fact, they were separated while my mum was on holiday. So my best friend's mum, bless her, had dropped me off at the hospital. She was like, look, you're not well. And the doctor said, look, you can either stay here in the hospital or you can stay here in the hospital and we're going to make you stay. I was like, okay, so I basically have to stay. They were like, yeah, you're either going to voluntarily be here or we're going to section you, which in the UK is basically a mental health act where you're not allowed to leave for a period of 30 days. And it's for your safety or the safety of the general public. You might be at harm to yourself or others, causing an accident. I stood on a car, these things didn't go down well. Great sound effects for the night. So in essence, what happened to me was, I'm in hospital, and it turned out that they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder, which is essentially a mood disorder, also known as manic depression. And someone that has that type of diagnosis basically experiences high highs, so kind of over-exuberance, hyperactivity, oversensitivity, loudness, and it's quite extreme. And then the downside is depression and depressive episodes, and it's kind of a cycle. So once you've had a cycle, they can kind of track back and give you that definition. So for me, it was a shock to the system. I was there, I was on top of the world at uni 1 minute, throwing parties, excited about what I was going to be pursuing. The next minute, I'm in a hospital. And it was probably the most humbling experience that I've ever experienced. It's strange, so I don't talk about it that much. The idea that suddenly that I was ill and I couldn't see it was very bizarre. Here I am in a hospital with other people that are also ill. But the thing about mental health is you can't see it. It's not like physical health. You literally can't see what someone's challenges are. And so I was going around the hospital because I was hyperactive, and I was talking to people. I was like, what's wrong with you? And they're like, I'm depressed. I was like, you don't look depressed. I'm like, no, I really am. I was like, okay, well, let me help you out. I've got a book that will be really good for you. So I called my mum. I was like, bring all my books, all my self-help books. And I literally bought my book of 50 books into the hospital. And then I went to another guy, and he clearly hadn't washed. His hair was growing. I said, look, let's get you a haircut. You need to sharpen up. Then you're going to feel so much better. And now, anyway, this went on for a few days, and then ultimately, the hospital staff pulled me aside and said, look, James, you need to wake up. I was like, what's the problem? I said, you're ill. I was like, I feel fine. And they're like, no, you're unwell, and the people that you're interacting, you're making them uncomfortable. You're not being helpful. And that was another really difficult moment for me, because I was like, all I'm trying to do is help people. And so the reason I share that story, and my story is quite extreme, I admit. Since then, I've actually been in a number of different mental health hospitals, and I really have to work super hard on managing it. And generally, I stay well for 99% of the time, and then something switches and I go off the wall. And, this is the reason why part of my message around mental health and then looking after yourself is also so important. So, if I said today was going to be about mental health, probably no one would show up, right? But the reality is, sustaining your mental health and sustaining your mindset throughout your career and throughout your life is a competitive advantage. And it comes back to the point I was making earlier of managing yourself and understanding yourself. It's really, really important that you take good care, and also that you look after your own mind, because it's your greatest asset. And if I'm honest, a lot of yes, I have the illness and all sorts of reasons, and scientifically why that might be, but I've also mistakenly driven myself too far, too often, where I've just driven myself to the pursuit of burnout. And that's also not healthy. So like there is, I also never accepted the word balance. Like I was like, how am I balanced? Like I want to be a mega earner. Like I'm not going to be a balanced guy. But I have, since realised I'm 36 now, 3 children. Like there does have to be times for breaks. There does have to be times to let go on holiday, make timing for yourself. Like everything that you pursue it with vigour, pursue it with drive. Even I believe in being obsessive, but do it in a sustainable way that you can actually sustain yourself. Because actually burning out or getting unwell is not productive and it's not helpful. Is there any questions, by the way? I'm kind of flowing, or observations or comments, like, and please do, like, I welcome them. Does anybody want to ask me anything before I continue?
Was there like a light bulb moment where, because I can imagine when you first heard it, like what you're talking about with the finance, you said, was there a moment where you felt, oh, what I've just done here doesn't really make sense? Is that, I don't know if that's too personal.
No, like I said, I'm an open book. Yeah, it was so bizarre, and I've questioned it actually, to be honest. It's taken me many years to go, okay, clearly I keep getting ill. So there is, I can't see it, no one can see it, but I have a history of repeatedly getting ill, so I accept it as a diagnosis. But like it was, I didn't accept it at all. Like when they told me, I was like, this is just not real. Like there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Like you guys have called this so wrong. And actually one of my lines was, and I still kind of play up to this a bit, because I have a lot of friends in Silicon Valley and Austin. I've got a big network in the US, lots of entrepreneurs, lots of very wealthy people I know now that I've got to meet. And I'm like, look, my ideas and dreams, if you sat me around the fire at Burning Man and I went off like this, it wouldn't be a problem. But me sitting in London saying that I'm going to be this, is like, you're now judging me that I'm manic, which is like a trait as well. And there's actually a book, I've read lots of books on the topic, but there's a book in the US called, I think it's called The Hypermanic Edge, and it basically profiles entrepreneurs. And if you put like a high-performing entrepreneur against someone that has a diagnosis of bipolar, they're actually the same traits. But clearly, it's when you go across the line that it becomes a problem, like in the extreme. So yeah, it took me a while to kind of like come to terms with and figure out. But it also, I am really grateful for the experience, because it's given me a lot of humility of meeting people that literally do have nothing. And that also makes me realize that, when you do start achieving and you start earning, it's like, what can you give back as well? Like what you can, how can you help people? Again, a lot of people think, oh, I'm the sales guy that talks about helping people earn money. It's all about me. No, it's really not. Like, I actually am not attached to the money outcome at all. Like, I just believe that if I can create more wealth, support myself and my family, I'm going to be able to help more people beyond the sales profession. And me, like, that relates to mental health. So my why is really actually to support people with their confidence at any stage of their life. If they've got any type of diagnosis, it just happens that I like sales, and that's why I'm starting with salespeople. So hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into like my story, and some of the reasons why I am motivated to kind of support people and help you. And also there's a few nuggets of some lessons in there as well to be just mindful. And I also appreciate my story as a kind of an extreme version, but you'll have your own levels, right, of anxiety, depression, excitability, and